Hello. So, this is an introduction to VR, and kind of what we're going to be focusing on in this video is actually setting up VR for Unity. So, once you plug your VR headset in and once you start deving, you can sort of do everything you need to do in the Unity editor, so you don't really have to like build over and over to a device or anything like that to do any weird testing. So we're just gonna I'm gonna sort of cover how to set up a project for VR to have your headset then connect to the project so that you can sort of test on the fly. We're gonna go through the different kinds of VR setups. So we're gonna first go through OpenXR, which is, in my opinion, the best ones. The one built in for Unity. You don't need Steam VR to run it. You can just sort of use the system's default thing. Whatever can run it will run it, which is super powerful. With OpenXR, you can also run the thing or the project. You can sort of run it both on Windows build as well as build it straight to Quest, which is one of the most powerful things about it because it uses Unity's new input system. So when you say grip, any sort of generic XR controller or anything that is recognized as an XR controller that has a grip sort of action will then sort of receive and sort of give that feedback to the engine. So it is a super powerful tool. It is super lightweight. It is super easy to use, super easy to set up. So there's almost no reason to not use it. It's just you gotta sort of create your own systems for it and stuff like that. But once you've sort of made one very good one, you sort of just can use the same prefab and just adjust it. We're also going to be looking at the Oculus integration package, which is also a really nice package. The only problem with it is that it's very bulky, and a lot of stuff that the Oculus integration package has, OpenXR is generally a lot lightweight with it, and obviously OpenXR doesn't bloat up your project. The reason we're going to be looking at the Oculus integration package is because the Oculus Quests can do hand tracking, which is, sort of unique to the devices. Something like an HTC Vive and stuff like that can't do hand tracking. So we're going to be looking at hand tracking setup with the Oculus integration package, how to set up that prefab, and then how to utilize that stuff afterwards. And then finally, we're also going to be looking at Steam VR, which is also a super powerful Unity package, that sort of Valve developed. So it has a lot of built-in stuff, so a lot of things to make life a lot more easier. The only problem is that it sometimes doesn't like working with Universal Render Pipeline, which isn't a scare for a lot of people. But it does tend to crash. It does require Steam VR to be open. It does require quite a lot of things, and it just does sometimes become. And it's also now dependent on if your Steam VR updates something. There is a possibility something can break. So it is very powerful. It just sort of utilizes, obviously, because of Steam VR, it utilizes a lot of things on Steam, and it kind of does its own things quite differently. So obviously you can choose whatever you want. OpenXR is generally kind of the best thing just because of porting purposes. You can't really port from Steam VR to anything else because it's focused on Steam VR. Oculus integration package you can kind of use for both. Once again, a super bulky package. It does have a lot of stuff which is quite nice, but again, in the end of the day, it's your choice. OpenXR is generally the thing I would recommend everyone use just because of how easy it is to utilize. So let's start off with actually creating the project. So experiments, we'll just create a new folder called the OpenXR setup for us. So let's go and create that, select folder, and now we can just create this OpenXR setup. So I'm going to be using Universal Render Pipeline just because it's it's a super powerful pipeline. So instead of selecting that and getting all the templates, we're just going to start off with 3D and then integrate that in later. So we'll just start off. We will then create. And we'll be using Unity 2021 for this just because it's the latest thing I've installed and Unity kind of opens it already for me. but the same setup applies to Unity 2020. There may be a few slight variances here and there, otherwise it is super similar. Okay, great. Now that the Unity project is set up, this is sort of the most standard Unity setup that you're ever going to see. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually sort of going to go into our packages and things like that, but we're not going to do it through here. We're going to do it through the package manager rather. So go window asset, not mass manager, my bad, package manager. Select that. And then we can just sort of get rid of the things that we don't need, like version control. Unity's built-in one. I kind of just use GitHub or SVN, whatever you might want to use. They used to have Unity Collab, yeah, but I don't see it anymore, so it's not really something we need to remove. This is an optional step. You really don't need to do this. I just do it just to sort of clean things up a little bit more. Okay, great. So now we're actually going to bring the packages we need to actually get the VR to work. So from in the package manager, from packages, we're going to go to the Unity registry. And notice I don't have any preview packages in. Unity does have a preview package for some interaction stuff for the Unity XR. But once again, it's a preview package. It can change fairly often until its actual release. So if I kind of like make a tutorial on it now, it could change quite gradually before its actual release. And then sort of this video almost has no meaning, essentially. So no, we're going to only be looking at what is supported at this very moment. So let's first start off with actually the main package, which is the XR plugin management. So packages, Unity registry, and then right at the bottom will be our XR plugin management. So let's go ahead and install that. So this is just going to be the plugin that actually sort of that we can kind of use to actually manage our different VR packages like Oculus and OpenXR, OpenVR, whatever you want to use. OpenVR being the Steam that we discussed earlier. Okay, so now that we have XR plugin management installed, it's nice and quick. We can go ahead and install Windows plugin management if you want to use any of Windows things. All I'm going to be doing is we're going to be using OpenXR. So as you can also see that Windows is actually being deprecated. So that's actually very interesting. So let's go to OpenXR, a thing that we're actually going to be looking at. So just scroll down, search for OpenXR. So we have both Oculus XR plugin management, which we are going to use because if we want to bolt to Quest, we can easily do that, and the Oculus XR plugin actually puts our controllers in the correct place because OpenVR kind of favors something like the HTC Vive controllers. So if you're holding your Oculus controller, it's actually sort of tilted more forward in OpenVR or OpenXR. So if you want to ever build Quest, you just switch to Oculus XR, fix your controller sort of orientation, and then you can sort of proceed with your day. So let's go ahead and install OpenXR plugin. OpenXR plugin is going to install itself as well as the new input system. So if you want to do the step before, you can totally go ahead, but I'm just going to install it afterwards. Well, have it be installed with OpenXR because it's going to do that automatically for us. Okay, cool. It's going to ask if you want to restart. Just go ahead and say yes. This then just sort of adds the new input system into the build settings. Okay, cool. And then it's just going to open up our package manager again for us. If you're just going to be building for Windows, you can totally just stop here. Well, that's kind of all the packages we need. But for the future, in case we want to build for OpenXR for the Oculus Quest standalone, I'm just going to install the Oculus XR plugin. Okay, fantastic. So now we have our XR plugin management, we have our new input system, and now we have our Oculus XR, our OpenXR. So now the rest of the steps or any other packages you want to install will be totally up to you. I'm going to go ahead and install a universal render pipeline because OpenXR just sort of works with URP. We don't have to do any weird things to actually get it to work correctly, which makes OpenXR super powerful. Any kind of ambient occlusion, post-processing, anything just kind of works with URP and with OpenXR. Hey, fantastic. Let's go ahead and set up our project quickly. So just go ahead and create a folder for projects just so we can split up third-party stuff from our own sort of user-generated stuff. So XR stays exactly where it is. We're just going to go and create now a new settings folder. We're going to make URP settings so we can just separate that with lighting and stuff like that. And then we can actually go ahead rendering URP, and then we just create a pipeline asset forward renderer. We call it our URP settings, or URP, our default settings, in case you want to add different sort of settings and stuff like that. On our renderer, what we can do is go ahead and firstly let's enable post processing. And then we can add a render feature where we can add some screen space ambient occlusion. We just can call that SSAO, just shorten up that name, change that to depth, and now we have some ambient occlusion. There's also some screen space shadows, which I haven't messed around with yet. Maybe something cool to experiment with in the future. Right now, just leave some screen ambient occlusion because ambient occlusion makes everything look better. Cool. Now we can go ahead and just change some settings here. So just change it to 150. Get that 4 cascades. 1.15, 4 times anti-aliasing. Depth texture we generally gonna need. Opaque texture we sometimes do need, so let's just kind of leave that on. And just have some nice, just some softer looking shadows. This is all whatever you want to set up. This is just sort of giving me a default to work with. Okay, so let's go then into our project settings and let's just set up our graphics quickly for that. Okay, fantastic. Now we are completely using SRP, so that's fantastic. Not SRP, URP. My bad. Okay, cool. So now let's actually set up our XR to work correctly. Let's go and set up OpenXR. So first thing you want to do is inside project settings, you want to go to project settings. So once again, you can either go via build settings or you can just go ahead and straight up edit project settings. And then right at the bottom here, you want to go to XR plugin management. You want to click on that. And then notice underneath that we have our Oculus and we have our OpenXR. It already has some settings set up for us, which we can kind of just leave alone. So the first thing we want to do is we want to set up OpenXR. So let's click on OpenXR and notice how we get a triangle, just sort of a warning. So let's just double click on it and kind of fix the warning. So essentially it's just telling us that we need to lock our input into game view so that the track pose drivers can actually work in play mode. This is obviously what we want, so we don't have to build every single time to do tests. And then interaction profile we'll set up now. So this is where we're going to give it profiles like the HTC Vive, the Oculus profile, Valve Index and stuff like that. So here's where we can actually offer our supports. So just go ahead, hit fix all. It's not going to fix that one because we're going to go set that up now. But now our input is now actually going to lock into play mode. So whenever we go into play mode, we can actually use our VR headset to do our tests. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead into OpenXR. So click on that. and here our interaction profiles. So far the list is empty, so let's go and add some. So we can just click on it, and here we have a bunch of options of things we can support. So the three generic ones is the HTC Vive, because that used to be a very popular headset before the Oculus Quest became a thing. Let's add the Valve Index, just because that's also another sort of popular headset that works with Steam VR. And then obviously the Oculus Touch Controller, because this is becoming a very big thing, the Oculus. So Oculus Touch Controller, this works with Quests, this works with Rifts, this works with any actual Oculus device, which is super nice. Okay, fantastic. Now if we go and click on XR plugin management, notice how our little triangle has gone away. So this just tells us that our stuff is ready to use. So we can close that, and now we can actually begin with creating our VR rig. So the first thing you want to do is let's just create a quick floor so we can kind of work with. Let's just rotate that 90 and just put 10 on each scale. Let's add a fancy little cube that we can just kind of bring a little bit forward. Alright, looking quite nice. And we've got our ambient occlusion built in. We can go ahead and now we can actually generate our XRX. So I just want to show you what will happen if you... okay, before we even get to that, let's just go ahead, right click. We're going to go to XR, which is now a new thing, and then convert main rig or main camera to XR. Now notice the word main camera. If our main camera is over here and it is not tagged as main camera, so just call it a player, or even untag it or whatever, and we go ahead and go to XR, convert main camera to XR rig, it is going to complain, telling us that we kind of don't have a main camera and it doesn't know what to do, so throws a red error. So it kind of looks for stuff and can't find it, and then goes red. So we can just clear that. We go to our main camera and just make sure that our main camera is tagged as main camera. So then we can go ahead and repeat that step. So XR, convert main camera to XR rig. Notice how we don't get any red errors. Notice how our thing has changed to an XR rig. So we can just kind of call that player. Okay, cool. So from here, the first few things I like changing is requested tracking mode. I like tracking from the floor just because it feels a lot more natural. When something drops, you can actually grab to go down to the floor and actually pick it up. It's just a lot more natural. I like it that way. There's obviously everything has its own use cases. I generally just set that to floor. Then we can go ahead to our camera offset, our main camera, and we can kind of just turn the post processing on, change that to FXAA, and then we can kind of leave everything as it is, and then we just use our pipeline settings for all the other stuff. Okay, epic. So now that we have post-processing and stuff like that all affected on the camera, we can go ahead and actually set up our hands now. So let's go ahead and just create some materials just so we can see our separate hands. So just make a folder for materials. Let's create a blue material, and let's create a red material. So our blue material, we'll just have, we're working with URP, so just go to turn on our emission, let's go to blue, let's go all the way there, and just sort of desaturate it, just so we have a nice emissive material. Let's do the same thing for red. Something like that. And now what we can do is we're going to go and set up our hands now so that the right and left controller is then tracked. So all you're going to do is under player, we're just going to create a new empty game object. Call that right hand. And then do the same thing, create empty, and we'll call that the left hand. Alright, cool. So on the right hand, here's where we're actually going to add our components so that it can be tracked. So let's start off by right hand, add component. And you're just going to type the word pose in, as you can see. So just type in pose, and then the first thing that'll pop up is a tracked pose driver. So you're going to click on that, and then we're just going to change a few things here. So instead of generic XR device, we're going to change it to generic XR controller. And then because this is our right hand, we're just going to set this up to the right controller, just so it matches our name. And then we're going to do the exact same thing for the left. Search for the word pose, track pose driver from device to generic XR controller, from left controller to left hand. So they'll automatically be nicely set up for us. Okay, cool. So, and then obviously, just in case you wanted to know, just sort of a cool did you know fact, the track pose driver for the camera is just a normal generic XR device, and then the sort of rest of the stuff is set up for us. But that's all set up for us when we actually convert the main camera to an XR rig. Okay, epic. So now we can actually just give ourselves cubes for hands for now. So just go give ourselves a cube, 0.1, 0.1, 0.1. And then we can duplicate that cube for our left hand. And then let's make our right hand blue. And let's make our left hand red. Let's do that. Okay, let's save. And now if you have your XR controller or your VR headset plugged in, you can actually just hit play and everything will just work. Okay, so just go ahead, put my headset on just so it can start tracking. Okay, fantastic. So now, there we are. Actually, I just realized we're not centered, so let's quickly do that. 0, and let's hit play again. Okay, fantastic. And now, as you can see, as I move my head in VR, everything is moving and I can see exactly what's happening in front of me. When I pick up my right controller, notice how I can actually see what's going on. I can see my controller rotate. So if I turn right, or if I turn clockwise, I'll sort of, everything's just tracking perfectly well, which is super cool. Same with the left hand. I did the same thing with this. So there's the left hand tracking. There's the right hand tracking. Fantastic. And there they are next to each other. Okay, fantastic. That's working. So now our XR rig is set up and we can do all the other stuff we want to do with it. So this will then be particular to your games, kind of what you want to do. Okay, what is this? That's just GUI problems, whatever. Okay, fantastic. And then we can just go ahead and just set up. Okay, so my mic cut out for like a little bit, so we're just going to kind of cover quickly what I sort of did. All I did was just add some post-processing just to bring the scene a little bit more life. There's some free juice. Just go ahead, add a bit of bloom, 1.3 on the intensity, change the tone map into ACS, and add a little bit to the post-exposure. That's kind of all I actually added. Anyways, so what we're going to do now is actually set up the input for VR, so actually receiving input and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is then we can just go ahead and create a settings. Actually, not even settings. We can just go ahead and do it straight up here. Create a scripts folder, and then we can do that. Create a new folder for input. And here we can actually create the input action. So this will be a generic XR controller. Okay, let's go and edit those actions, and here's where we can actually add our own things. So let's start off with a quick action map. So we can just hit plus, create an action map, call that right controller. And then we'll do one for the left controller. Right controller on the actions, we will then just set this up to be the grip. We can then set another one to be the trigger, or pinch, as it's sometimes actually called. And that's one, those are the two we can use for now. Just sort of grip and trigger. Let's call this grip. We can call this trigger. Okay, epic. And now we can go ahead and actually just sort of adjust these two. So because we're looking for the access of these controllers, we're going to actually determine in an input script once they're actually fully pressed or once they're fully released, and then something in the middle. So what we're going to do is just change this value to pass through on the grip, and we're just going to change that to an axis, and we'll do that for both the trigger and the grip. Okay, and let's just remember to do that then for both. These are generally the two buttons you're going to be using the most when interacting with VR. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and actually add our bindings. So what is grip? So we're going to go right controller, click on binding. On the path on the right here, we will then click that. And then here's where we actually have all the cool things for the new input system. We'll go to XR controller. So if you want to do some cool things with the, if you want to like check some settings or do some cool things with the XR sort of headset, you can actually kind of do things. So use a presence, maybe you pause the game when the user's not present, or sort of stuff like that, which is super cool. For our sake, we just want the right controller, so we can go to XR controller. Same thing over here, you can sort of grab all these cool things, HoloLenses, there's a lot you can do. That's what makes this system so powerful. Let's go to our XR controller, right hand, and then we're going to go to optional controls. Just go optional controls and then the grip. So notice the one with the arrow, dot, and then the arrow. That's actually getting the entire axis, so from 0 to 1. On grip pressed is its own action, so when you press the grip, it sort of fires off whatever's listening for grip pressed. And all those things, you can go down this list and actually change things you want to do. Grip force, this was the first, this is for the actual the Oculus Rift, the first one that could actually measure the force that we were kind of exerting on the grip. Right now we just do that with the actual buttons and getting a value of 0 and 1. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and hit grip. And for trigger, we can do the exact same thing. So go ahead, once again, it'll automatically sort of keep this last used value. So you can just go to option controls. And then once again, look for that same value, the trigger. And let's go and set up the left hand to do exactly the same. So we'll do the just exit because this is now the right hand. So now I must go to the left hand. Left hand, optional controls, grip. Same story, trigger, bindings. We'll make sure we're in the left hand, optional controls, and then the trigger. Cool, so now we have a grip, now we have a trigger. Okay, cool, let's save this asset. So now the asset is saved, we can perhaps dock it somewhere if you're gonna sort of come back to using this sometime again. So we have that, and now we just need to actually generate a C# class for ourselves so we can actually use this in an input manager. Just give Unity a bit to think. Okay, Unity's thought, and we have our script here. And we know that it's actually sort of woken up because we can actually see our bindings. We can see the names of our bindings and sort of stuff like that we all assigned. So that's cool, that's working, that we know it's working. So now we can go ahead and actually create an input manager for this. So we can just go ahead and create a managers folder. Inside here, let's just quickly neaten up the scene a little bit. Key. So anyways, all we did is essentially just kind of compiled everything, just sort of cleaned up the project just a little bit, and then added our input manager, which is right over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and just zoom in a little bit so you guys can see what's going on. Okay, cool. So first things first is we are actually going to want to use the Unity input system. So you just start using Unity engine.input system. And then we are going to fire up an event. So we're just going to use Unity engine.event, sort of start initializing that. Input managers. So firstly, we're going to actually want the reference to our generic input system that we just made, or our generic inputs that we just made. So we're just going to go ahead on projects once it kind of wakes up. Actually, not projects, input. Call the generic XR controller. Could actually have given that a better name. Call it just like generic XR input, something like that. So do that next time. So I just call it generic XR controller, and then we just call this thing input actions. And then we can go ahead and actually initialize that stuff. So we can go ahead into the awake function and just say that input actions equals a new class, generic XR. If it doesn't derive from one behavior, we don't have to worry about any of that referencing nonsense. And then in the awake, we can then just enable that. And then once again, unenable, undisable, undispose, dispose, or on destroy, my bad. Let me dispose it, that's what's going to happen. Okay, cool. So we're going to actually enable the input actions here. So input actions dot enable, input actions dot disable, and here's where we do input actions dot dispose. There we go. Okay, fantastic. Now what we can do is actually just grab the left and right. Actually, before we do that, it's just sort of neaten this up and just call this initialization. So that's all the initialization of the stuff that we need to do. Okay, cool. So now we can actually go ahead, now that we've sort of enabled this stuff, we can actually go and assign inputs to it. So input actions dot then our first map, which is the right controller, or our first action. We're going to get the grip of it and dot performed. So when we perform it, we are then just going to equal that to the press grip. Okay, and then the same thing for trigger. We're just going to change that to trigger. And then this will be press trigger. Okay, let's just sort of repeat that for the left controller. Okay, fantastic. And then we can just do this right for the sake of simplicity. There's probably a much better way to do this, but for the sake of some simplicity, let's do that. And that is not right, that is left. Okay, and then we just go ahead, light bulb, and then just generates all these methods for us. Okay, all these throws, we can delete those lines. We don't need those anymore. Okay, fantastic. So now we've gone ahead and all we've done is just added delegates. Essentially, that's all these are. And so whenever we do stuff on the right controller, whenever we press the grip, we are going to look at grip right, trigger right, grip left, trigger left, etc., etc. That's all we're doing, and then we're just disabling it. And so this is all our initialization. So actually, we want to move all that over there rather. And then here will be our, this will be our input handlers, which we can do over there. Fantastic. There's gonna be a lot of like shared stuff that we can do with this in terms of like code. So essentially all we're gonna do is actually let us sort out our Unity inputs for now. So let's just quickly create our events. So because this is the input manager, let me actually just grab my singleton script and put it inside this project before I forget. Because we do want to make this a singleton and should we need to reference it in the future. Extensions. And then I'll just go ahead over here and then just drag my singleton extension inside that folder where it belongs. Okay, fantastic. And now we can actually just go ahead and make this input manager a singleton, which we'll then call input manager. Okay, fantastic. And now we can actually sort of create our events. So Let's start off by doing left hand events, or left hand. Let me just do left hand grip events. Left hand grip events. Let's do left hand trigger events. And then we can actually duplicate this and change this for right hand stuff. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do is a public static unit event. And all this is going to be on grip pressed. Is a new unit events. We're going to do a public static oops. This is going to be an on grip updated, so this will then pass through a float. Well, that's kind of what we're actually reading between 0 and 1. So we're on grip updated. So when we press the grip, so when we're in between a certain threshold, so like 0.1 and 0.9, where it's not gripped, not fully gripped, but it's also not fully released, we'll then transfer these values to whoever is actually listening for it. And then we'll have a public static. We can actually just duplicate that line over there. And then we'll have this on grip released. Instead of on grip, maybe have this on grip left. Oops. On grip left hand, or on left hand grip released, or stuff like that. Let's duplicate that for the triggers. So instead of on grip, it'll be rather on trigger. Okay, cool. And then we can actually just duplicate all of these. Instead of left hand, those will all turn now to right hand. So quite a lot of events. This can obviously be optimized a lot more, but this is just like sort of the quick way to do it. Okay, fantastic. Now we can go ahead, now that we've actually kind of made all our stuff, we can go ahead and actually sort of create our code for actually reading this data. So let's go ahead and start off with the grip. So all we're going to do is we can actually make a bunch of private variables. It's just so we can store stuff. So instead of making new variables every single frame or every single time the grip is pressed or something like that, we can actually just sort of store it. Just so we make the value once and we store it. So we'll just do this as left and grip value, right and grip value. We'll have this for the triggers as well. We'll do this for left hand trigger value, right hand trigger value, and then we'll just have a bunch of bools for grip pressed or left grip pressed. We have this for right grip pressed. We'll do the same for triggers, so we can just do this on and just sort of split this up like this. Press bulls, and then we can do this same for here. So bull. Actually, we can just go ahead and do that. Instead of grip, we will change that word now to trigger. Trigger pressed, and let me also just change those two to capital G's. Oh, whoops, that did exactly what I thought it would do. Okay, fantastic. Now that we have sort of all our stuff initialized, things that we're going to need, we can actually start assigning values. So now we're going to start with the press press grip right. So now this is actually checking for when we're pressing the right hand grip. So all we're going to do in this script is we're just going to check the right hand grip value, and all we're going to do is read the value we get from the input system, which is over there. So it's not called CTX, it's rather called obj dot read value, and the value we want to read from that is a float. Oops, we want to read a float. And now, instead of making a new variable every single frame, we're just storing it to the one we made now. Just a little bit more optimized. We're not creating garbage for absolutely no reason. We can just kind of update values. These are static. There's only going to be one controller, player right-hand controller and stuff like that. So there's no reason we don't need to store that. Okay, fantastic. Now we actually need to invoke a function if we have not if we've not fully gripped nor fully released the button. So let's start off by that. So we'll do our simple if statements that we should actually make a threshold. So I'm actually gonna go here, create a serialize field vector 2 because I want a min and a max threshold. So what a min and a max threshold is, so if we go below the threshold, which we will probably declare 0.1, we fully release the grip. If we go above the threshold, which we will probably set as 0.9, it means we have actually fully gripped the controller. Because no value ever hits a pure 0 and no value ever hits a pure 1. So we just need to set up a custom threshold that we can deal with that. So we can kind of just do a value threshold or a press and released threshold. Okay, and then we can equal that, because it's a vector 2, we can actually equal that to a new vector 2 at start, and we can assign those values to 0.1f, 0.9f. All right, fantastic. So we have 0.1, 0.9. So if we go above those values, or go below those values, then we actually fire off the released and pressed sort of values. Okay, fantastic. So now we're just going to quickly check if the right-hand grip value that we are setting now is greater than the threshold dot x. So if it's greater than the smallest point of the threshold, and we need to also make sure that that value, that the right-hand pressed value, right-hand grip value, is smaller than the y value of the pressed threshold. Then we know we're in between fully pressed and fully released. So then we can then just do an on grip right hand updated dot invoke. And then we just need to pass through the right hand grip value that it wants from us. Okay, fantastic. So now we've just made our first event and we're updating our first event. So whatever listens for this, maybe if your hand is kind of hovering over something, it's now listening for, or maybe another like cool scenario is perhaps using a fire extinguisher. So instead of having a fire extinguisher just fire either like fire or remove, so now you can actually have sort of more extinguishing agents sort of come out the more you press the trigger, for example. Same thing, instead of fire extinguisher, you can have it as a flamethrower. So the harder you press the trigger, the more flames come out. So this would be like a cool scenario for that. So we can just set that up over there. And now what we can actually do is set up our pressed and released functions. So all we can do is just set that up with, so all we need to check for is, just trying to get my brain around this. So we're going to check if we have, if the right hand grip, what did I call it now? Right grip pressed. So we're now going to check if the right grip is not pressed. And we're going to then check if the right hand grip value is above the threshold that we set earlier. So if we've not pressed the grip and we're actually over that grip value, the max, which is the Y, then what we can do is actually fire off that event. So on grip right hand pressed dot invokes. Now if we now send in an event that the right hand has, that the grip on the right hand has been pressed, and then we can actually just set right hand pressed or right hand grip pressed to true. Oops. And then now we've set up the max value, we can then just set up the released value. So we're just going to check if our right grip pressed, if we're actually pressing the controller. This just acts as a fail safe as well, just so that when we grip, it only fires the event once. When we release, it only fires the event once. So we're just going to check if we've pressed it, and if the value of our grip is smaller than the threshold that we set up earlier, the lower value of the threshold. And if it is, then we do on grip right released, and we just then invoke that event. And then all we're going to do is just set this back to false. So now we have our press grip right hand. We get in the value from the float. So that's what we're reading from the input action. We are checking if the value that we are pressing the grip at is in between the min and the max value of our threshold. Then we're just firing off our on grip right hand updated unit event with the value. And then if we want, and then we're doing another check to check if our right hand value is greater than the max value. It means that we are then pressing the controller, and then we just set that to true so we don't fire this event more than once. And if we're already pressing the controller, or if we've already pressed the grip, and our right hand value or our right hand grip value is now below the lowest point of the threshold, we are just doing a grip released and then just saying that the grip is now released. We can now take this and actually copy this over and over. So we can actually just take this to the left hand now. So let's do that. Alright, and this won't be right hand grip anymore. This will be then the left hand grip value. Okay, and then instead of checking for right hand grip, we are just going to then check for left hand or left grip pressed rather. Okay, fantastic. And then we just check in the exact same threshold, and then instead of on grip right hand, it'll be on grip left. Update, well, not updated, my bad. On left grip left pressed, on grip left released, on grip left updated. Okay, so we have our left hand sorted out here, left hand grip values, all that funny stuff over there. On grip left hand updated, pressed, released, and now we can do the same thing with the triggers. We can kind of just do a check over here. So this is the right hand. So we'll do right hand trigger value. We'll just set those values over there. Right trigger pressed. And then we'll do on trigger right updated, on trigger right pressed, on trigger right released. We can go ahead, do the same thing over here. Left trigger value. Left trigger pressed. And we'll just update the functions again, or the events again. So on trigger right update, ally, on trigger left updated, on trigger left pressed, on trigger left release. So if left hand trigger value, on trigger left hand updated, on trigger left hand released, on trigger left hand pressed, my bad, and on trigger left hand released. And then we just check for all those values. So now we have all that. So now we've actually set up all those inputs and refine off the events accordingly that we kind of need. Now you can just set up debugs and just sort of check that they are working. So what we can do is, if we're in between the value, we can log out the right hand. So just start off by right grip will be our right hand grip value. We don't need that. We can actually say right hand grip pressed, and this will be right hand grip released. We can actually just copy this over for literally everything else. So we can just kind of have, oops, my bad, that going on. We can just go and move that up there. So this would be one right. This would be, oops, I could just do boom, boom. Let's change that to left. And then we can actually kind of just sort that out. Okay, so we have the right hand grip, the pressed, we have the released over here. Let's go ahead and do that now for the triggers. So right trigger, the right and trigger value. just say right trigger pressed, right trigger released. Okay. Oh, whoops, this is annoying. Okay, whatever. We'll just go ahead and duplicate that there. Duplicate that there. Duplicate that there. Change everything that's right to left. Okay, fantastic. Now we've actually set up all that code. Now the code is all being set up and our input manager is now completely set up. We can actually go and test these values out. So let's go ahead, let's save, and let's go and test those values out. So let's just not maximize on play. Let's rather just continue like this. Okay, now our input is set up. So I just go and sort of turn this video headset on and go ahead and start pressing the trigger. Notice how it's picking up values, and if I release the trigger, it stops picking up values. Press the trigger all the way, right trigger pressed, right trigger released, right trigger pressed, right trigger released. Let's actually just remove the collapse because that's causing issues. But yeah, let's do the same for the grip. So it's grip, just go grip, look how it's reading the values. As we go all the way, right to the end, to the threshold, on right grip pressed, and as we sort of release it slowly, on right hand grip released. Do the same for the trigger. Pressed, release. And we can do it now for both. Notice how it's picking up both grip and released. And if I press both of them, right hand trigger pressed, right hand trigger released, and do the exact same thing for both. Let's do it now for the left hand. So as we press down the trigger, left hand, left trigger pressed, left trigger released. Same thing for the grip. Left hand grip pressed, left hand grip released. So now we've set up a completely working input system that now, a completely working and modular input system that now absolutely any scripts can go and listen to. And because we're kind of done with all the debugs, we're just going to clean up our code nicely. Going to close those things. We can then go ahead, now that our input system is working, and go give it our namespace. Just so it doesn't interfere with any kind of input system that may be in Unity or another package that you might consider bringing in later. And then you can actually go ahead and just sort of comment on this code. But otherwise, all the events are working, everything, and our entire input system is working. So this is perfect. Okay, so actually, before I forget, I did catch a little bug. Because as soon as we would fully press the grip of the button and slowly release, and then press again completely down, it wouldn't actually pick up that we actually pressed the grip or trigger or anything like that again. So all we're going to do is just take these values, the released, we're just going to then just release the ball. So once it's not pressed anymore, we're actually just going to reset all those values back to false. This then we'll just be able to press again. So if I don't fully release and I press back down completely, I want the left hand event, or I want those sort of press down events to fire off correctly. So just hit play again. And now if I go ahead and clear once Unity wakes up, there we go. So now if I go ahead, there's my VR, there's my little control over there, I press. So if I press the grip down completely and I release a little bit and press down again, notice how it gives me the pressed event again. That's kind of actually what I want. So there is a bug. I did fix it. I did catch it. So please refine the code just to sort of accommodate those new changes over there. I'll just like show the code one more time and just sort of run through it down, or run down it as a quick summary. So right at the start here, all I'm doing is just namespace it so it doesn't interfere with anything else that may be called an input manager. We just made it a singleton. We got a generic XR controller, which is the input actions that we set up earlier. We have our threshold values for pressed and released, so we can actually change this in the inspector, should we so desire to. Just 0.1 and 0.9 is just some good values. We made a bunch of events for left hand grips, left hand triggers, and right hands, so I've just made a bunch of events. We just made a bunch of floats just so we can store those values so we don't have to create garbage every single frame, because right now we're not actually creating any garbage, which is super nice. Then we just have our awake, where we kind of actually just creating the new class, assigning all our stuff to it, enabling it, disabling it, and disposing it should it be destroyed. And then all we're doing is getting the value from all our stuff and just passing through the correct events. So on updated, on pressed, and release. And we're kind of doing that for every single one of those things inside the scripts. It's a nice simple script that just does a lot and super modular, and it relies on absolutely nothing else besides our generic XR controller. And there it is. So there is Unity, there is setting up the project with OpenXR, and there is creating an input system for OpenXR. This can be built on so much, this can be optimized a lot more, but there's a good starting ground for you to create your projects with.